that means it's time for our July wrap up. This month we really made it a goal to stick to our TBR, but here's what happened. The two that I didn't read, one of them had really bad reviews and I didn't want to put myself through that.
Right?
And then the other one was Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score, which is very thick. I just didn't get to it, but I still want to read it.
I read 5 out of the 6 I talked about in our July TBR, and the only reason I didn't read that one was because I couldn't find the free ebook anywhere. So I put that one on hold. I tried to get it on the Libby app, but my estimated time was like 5 weeks, and I was like, okay, so that's not gonna happen this month. But that's really good for me because I never stick to my monthly TBR.
Good job.
I know. Not only did I read 5 of the ones on my list, but I read a few extra ones as well that have been on my TBR for a while. The first one I have here is Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I had been waiting to read this because I knew it had mixed reviews, but I am so glad I ended up reading it this month. I believe this is a YA dystopian fantasy read, and I really do enjoy those. In this world, everyone is divided by blood. You either have silver or red blood, and the silver bloods have these supernatural powers, so they're essentially gods. Our main character, Mare, is a red blood, and she steals and does what she has to do to help out her family. She ends up at the royal palace and discovers she has powers of her own. This is unheard of for red bloods. This discovery changes everything in this world. I'm not going to spoil too much. I really love the world it was based in. I did like the characters, but as it went on, I feel like it started to fall flat for me. I did see a little bit of a spoiler, which I'm so mad at myself for reading, but I think me knowing that was coming up changed the outcome for me because I was predicting what was going to happen at the end.
I finally got around to reading Maybe in Another Life by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is actually the last book of mine that I have of hers on my physical TBR, so I'll have to buy some more.
Yeah.
What a plot, honestly.
Yeah.
This plot was so different. It was interesting to see just how drastically different Hannah's life would be just based off a simple decision she made one night. Hannah goes back to her hometown. She sees her high school boyfriend that she was with. That night she has to decide whether or not she's going to go home with her best friend or is she going to go home with this guy. We see both paths, and each path is so different. Big life-changing things happen to her. I really like how it all came together. If you have read this book, just know that I am 100% Team Henry. If you have read it, let me know what team you're on.
In our TBR video, I talked about how I wanted to read this ebook. I couldn't find it as an ebook, so I ended up buying the physical copy, but I'm glad I have it. This is Hate by Tate James. It's part of the Madison Kate series. I believe there's 4 books, and this was Nikki's recommendation. Shout out Nikki, she never misses. I honestly think if you're trying to get into dark romance, this is a perfect starter one because it's not too dark.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a solid storyline. This was my first reverse harem story, so it is a polyamorous relationship. It's already so good. The only reason I didn't give this one a 4-star was because I felt like I needed a little bit more to happen. It ends kind of abruptly, and I wish we got a little bit more, but it just makes you want to read the second book. In this story, we have 2 rival gangs. We follow a girl named Madison Kate. Her and her friend go out for the night. This crazy event happens and she ends up being the scapegoat. She takes the blame. She was set up. She gets sent away, and then a year later when she returns home, she realizes she's living with the 3 guys that set her up, and it's so good. I did think it was really entertaining. I like the characters. I'm ready to read book 2. There were a couple scenes that did remind me of other stories. Like I said, the Ravenhood trilogy, a little bit of Punk 57 because it's like a light bully romance. There was some weird things in the writing. I feel like it was kind of repetitive at times, but I overall really did like the story. I would recommend.
I finally read Fable. It has been on my shelf for so long, just like everything else. It was so good. So the story is about Fable, and after the death of her mother, her father ends up abandoning her on this really dangerous island. She then has to try to survive and use all of the skills that her mother had taught her. She's just trying to get off this island and find her father and demand her place on his crew. But it's so much more than that. That's just like as much as I could really say without spoiling anything. Overall, it was really immersive. Adrienne Young ended it on such a cliffhanger that I am so ready to read the next one. I wasn't expecting her to do me like that, but she did it. I'm so happy I finally read it.
Earlier this month, I talked about how I wanted to start the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. We loved ACOTAR. You guys know I had been waiting to start the series because I didn't know which book to start with. In our TBR video, I finally decided I'm gonna start with Throne of Glass, the first one published. And then one of you guys commented and said, hey, you know what? You should check out out this person's video because they explain why you should start with Assassin's Blade. I watched it, I was sold, I read Assassin's Blade instead. Can I just say though, I'm so glad I started with this book. It's the prequel to Throne of Glass, if you didn't know. It was published after the series was already in motion, but with it chronologically, I knew I needed to read it first. We're in Selena's point of view and we follow her on 5 different missions. I have such a great understanding of who she is as a person, why she does what she does. She's a 15-year-old assassin in this book. Yeah, which is already crazy. But at the end of the day, it's kind of a huge love story. We basically follow her journey. This was such a great introduction to the world, the main character. It gave me such a good foundation and I'm so ready to start Throne of Glass now.
I really wanted to read Where the Crawdads Sing this month because the movie did just come out. This book is about Kaya. She is the outcast in the town because she did grow up in the marsh by herself, so they refer to her as the marsh girl. We just see her life like that through the years as she's growing up, and one day in this town there is a murder and everybody is suspecting that it is Kaya because she's the marsh girl, and who else would do something like this? So we're just following Kaya through her life and this trial. We're trying to figure out what happened with this murder. I really liked that the readers were kept in the dark about what happened with this murder. I did watch the movie and a lot of people really did not enjoy it, but I think because I went into it thinking it's gonna be really, really bad, I really didn't think it was that bad. I think I did like the book better. As always, I feel like that's just how it goes.
I did read a YA thriller this month, and that was I Know What You Did Last Summer. This is a classic. It came out in the 70s. I know that this is the updated version. The author kind of made changes to make it fit more modern times, and that's the one I own. If you don't know, the story is about a group of teenagers. They're coming home from a party one night and something happens. They all are sworn to secrecy, and a year later someone is threatening them and they basically have to try and outsmart this killer. I grew up always hearing references of this story and of this movie adaptation, right? And the movie adaptation is a horror slasher film. So I went into this book thinking that's what it was going to be, right? Not only did it read a lot younger than I was expecting, but I kept waiting for it to get really action-packed. It just never did, and I was really confused. At the very end of the book, they have a written interview with the author. She basically explained that she had nothing to do with the movie. She actually didn't even know they were adapting it until it was playing at her home local theater. And she bought a ticket and was like, oh my god, I have to see what they did. And she was so shocked. She thought she went to the wrong theater because it was a slasher film. And she was like, that was not what I wrote. So she was so surprised that that's what they turned it into. I think me going into the book thinking it was going to be like that really did change the way that I experienced the story. I do think it was good. This feels like a book that I would have loved in middle school. I think it was just way younger than I was expecting. I thought it was okay. Very predictable though, but again, it is for a younger audience. Can't even get mad at that. That's my fault.
I did read The Wicked King in the 24-hour reading blog. Everybody was telling us to keep reading it. It only gets better. And I did like this one more than The Cruel Prince, but it still just wasn't everything that I thought it was gonna be. We do have a whole reading blog on The Cruel Prince. It's basically just a YA fantasy series with some romance in there. The Cruel Prince was left on kind of a cliffhanger, so I was pretty excited going into this. I noticed Holly Black again did end this one off on a really good cliffhanger, so I'm definitely gonna want to read the next one, and I need to do it soon because that's also what I noticed. I forget so easily. There was so many characters in this book that when I finally did read this one, I was like so confused by who everyone is.
In that same 24-hour video this month, I read Tender as the Flesh. This one had been popping off for a while now. Everyone said it was crazy. I knew the story was about cannibalism. Even though I'm a vegetarian, for some reason I still decided to read this book. I do see why it was popular. The overall message of the story I did like, at least what I took from it. I do think it touches on a lot of really important, interesting topics we don't think about day to day. I've said it before, but it's set in a world where basically all of the animals on Earth caught this virus. Animals were unsafe to eat. So instead, humans decided to eat other humans. It started this whole cannibalism process. They started breeding humans for meat consumption. Really crazy world that it's set in. The plot follows this guy that works at one of these special meat slaughterhouses. He is gifted a human being, though they treat them as animals, and he doesn't know what to do with it because he doesn't really agree with this lifestyle. He's now a vegetarian himself, and it's illegal to treat them with any humanity. You're not supposed to treat them like humans because we're not supposed to look at them that way. However, he starts to have this attachment with her, so we see where that goes. The ending I was not expecting at all. Probably one of the biggest shocks that I've read so far this year. I do like how it touches on animal cruelty in a way that puts everything in perspective. A lot of you guys did say that you really enjoyed this book, and I see where you're coming from.
Y'all know we have been trying to make our way through the Addicted / Calloway Sisters series. I read the next one. We get to go back to the roots. Lily and Lo, they are like the main characters of this whole series. I didn't really enjoy this one just because it was basically a rewriting of the first two Calloway Sisters books, which was Kiss This Guy and Hot House Flower. For that reason, it was really hard to get through. So now the Addicted series has caught up with the Calloway Sisters series. I am a little scared to start the next book.
The trope is not it.
The trope I'm not a fan of. I don't think anybody is a fan of that trope, but okay.
My last two books I'm just gonna quickly go over because you did see me talk about them in a 24-hour readathon. And both of these are continuations of a series. The first I have City of Ashes in the Mortal Instruments series. This is book 2. An okay continuation of the story. At the end of the day, I felt like this book ended essentially the exact same way as book 1 ended. However, I did end up watching the Mortal Instruments City of Bones movie adaptation this weekend, and it was great. I think they took elements from book 1 and 2 for the movie. I almost wish they would have continued with those because the cast was excellent. I know there's a TV adaptation. I don't know if I'm gonna start watching it. Let me know if I should. This one was just okay. I do want to finish the series this year though. Second, I have The Risk, the Briar U series. You guys know we love Elle Kennedy and this off-campus / Briar U series. This was just the next one I had. Cute contemporary sports romance, and this trope was a little bit of like a forbidden romance, so I really liked it. We're determined next month we're reading 10 books each.
Minimum. Friday we will be putting out our August TBR.
Which is crazy
is that?
We've got some fun videos coming out next month, so as always, please make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you next time.